Aloha, my love, and welcome to the Divine Feminine Ascension podcast, where we talk about the initiatory path of embodied spirituality. I am your host, Celeste Luz, and I'm here to support you in the embodiment of your sacred feminine wisdom as you ground your spiritual journey while creating a desire-led life. Join me to talk about integration, embodiment, and initiations of divine feminine ascension. Aloha, my love, and welcome into this space. I invite you to just take a nice exhale, empty out your belly, relax your shoulders, and soften your eyes, no matter where you are. And just take a nice, deep, embodied breath all the way down into your hips. Wiggle your jaw and just take a gentle sigh. I am so happy to be here with you. I feel like it's been a really long time and there's just so much I want to share. So today we're going to kick off basically this year with some of the messages that came through in my recent visit to Hawaii. I was there, thankfully, for a good part of January into February. And alongside closing the doors to the Hawaii studio, of course, that came with a beautiful rebirth, an initiation process, a lot of integration, and a lot of moving through what is to come for this year on this platform, for the school, for our nonprofit. And amongst moving through all of that, being on the land of Hawaii for me is always radically magical, to say the least. And when you go on that land with a pure intention of receiving whatever is meant to come through, the land speaks to you very, very clearly. And with the closing of a business that was so much a part of my old life, and also a birthing of a school that is so much a part of my soul mission, I received so much, and I just want to share some of that with you today. So the first part of this was realizing that the death cycle is so much a part of our life, of the feminine path. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this because on the surface, we know this logically. But as this feminine path continues to unfold and expose itself to me, it's like the layers of the rose continue to open. And the deeper we go into these realms, the more we can receive its medicine. So if we just think of death as a simple dying off of something, but we're not actually reaping its medicine and sitting with it and allowing for the whole grieving process to move through us, what ends up happening is that we cut ourselves off of the medicine that death actually brings. So in my case, having to close my basically dream come true of a business was something that was difficult at the forefront. And as I moved through it and coming out of it, just like cyclical living, just like the wisdom behind cyclical living, just like the process of moving through menses, everything that was no longer serving me was also leaving as I closed those doors. And I wasn't able to see that, and not only see that, but actually feel that in my body until I turned in the keys and walked away. And even still coming back into my life, realizing how much of my energy and my life was going to something that was no longer in alignment to where I am going, where I am headed to. It was like the rose bush was holding on to the rosebuds, but not wanting to blossom. It was like all I wanted to do was be a rosebud, not realizing that its full manifestation was to blossom into the most incredibly divine rose. And so I think sometimes a part of releasing aspects of ourselves, or even bringing awareness to the parts of us that just no longer serve, it's like difficult for the mind to grasp, and we would rather just hold on to the normal day-to-day circumstances, the things that we're already used to. I was so used to having this thing take up so much of my life that I actually didn't want to feel the emptiness of not having it, even though it represented so much freedom and so much expansion. I couldn't see it. And in Cyclical Wisdom, we go deeper into the medicine of the literal menses and the metaphorical menses. And we realize that without the winter, of course, there is no spring. And what this invitation is for you is to ask, what part of your life are you grasping onto? What relationship, belief system, job, role, behaviors, routines, what are you holding on to that you know you don't really want to anymore, but there's a part of you that's like, but it's so much a part of me. Like, it's not that big of a deal if I hold on to it, right? I can hold on to that and do the other thing. And that was where I was for a very long time. I could hold on to this studio and just continue on and do everything else. But the truth is, I couldn't. And the truth about life is, you can't fully go through a menses or a winter and hold on to the flowers of the last spring. It's not possible. And when I was in Hawaii and seeing so much of the volcanic rock always brings me back to the deep wisdom of the land. And it was just so much of a confirmation that when we can stabilize our heart and really anchor into the wisdom of our womb and know what is for us and know what no longer serves for us, we can follow through and we can go through with taking actionable steps toward what no longer serves. So I welcome you today to just take a moment, maybe press pause, or notice where your body or your mind immediately goes when I ask you this question. What are you holding on to that no longer serves? What are you just feeling over about? What are you ready to move out of? And then what's on the other side of that? What's possible when you allow the full death and grieving process to occur? The next insight that came through was during my time in Big Island when we went to the Volcanic National Park. And of course, connecting to Pele there, the goddess of creation and destruction. She is the one who initially initiated me into the feminine path. And it was such a beautiful reminder of the fundamental parts of this life and how this life requires us to fully grasp the entire polarity of this human experience. And not only this human experience outside of us, but really most importantly, the full spectrum of our own human experience and human psyche. And so what that means is that to fully embrace all parts of us, not only just the love and the light, not only just the parts of us that we're proud of, but to really get curious about how the parts of you that you perhaps are repressing or quieting or not allowing to fully express, how are those parts of you actually holding back your magic, actually cutting you in half and holding back from the true expression of all that you are. It's kind of like if we only had the sun and we didn't have the moon. That's literally what it's like when you only accept the parts of you that you like, or you only deal with the parts of you that you like, and you don't allow yourself to explore the parts of you that are kind of like lurking in the background, and you just pretend that they're not there. But they come up once in a while, when you're showering or when you're walking down the street or when you have random thoughts. They're there. And Pele reminded me of the power and the magic that lies behind moving into those spaces. And it's so perfect because now, with the opening of the seductress path, this is the path of womb awakening. This is where Pele begins her journey with you. This is where the feminine begins to initiate you on the path of embodiment. And this is when we initially drop into our womb and begin to touch the soil of our consciousness, quite literally touch the darkness within the womb. And I had a beautiful experience, and this goes into the third part in Kauai, moving into the womb of creation, moving into the original creation codes, and realizing how if we're not in touch with the darkness of our womb, with the darkness of our aspects, then we actually can't fully create all that we're destined to create. What that means is that if we're not fully rooted in all that we are, it's like planting a seed a little too close to the surface where it actually doesn't ever germinate. So in order for us to fully manifest our destiny or fully manifest what we know we're capable, deep, 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 deep down inside, ask yourself, am I living the fullest expression of me? Now that's a big question, right? Usually, authentically, the answer is no, because we can always be more and do more. And this is not about that. This is about really being satisfied and anchored in the way that you're showing up and moving through the world. And what Kauai showed me and what the contrast of Pele and creation was showing me was that if we are not tapping into the soil that makes up our womb and our psyche, we're not rooted in all that we are. We're only shining a false light. We're only moving from a place of comfort and doing good things and looking good and taking the easy road. I hope this is landing because these words are not meant to be taken literal. I want you to feel beyond the words and notice where in your body and in your life you are not anchoring to your fullest expression. Because here's the thing. When we're living a half expression, what ends up happening is that we are creating a half connection with our body wisdom. And I think this is a really big topic on the feminine embodiment path that doesn't get talked about enough. we're often asked to show up in certain ways within certain societal structures or environments. And those ways are very constructed. They're not always natural to who we are. So what that means is that if we're not allowing ourselves to be really anchored in who we are and what we truly believe in that moment, we are half-assing it, for lack of better words. And where that leaves us is that it leaves us disconnected to our bodies. And if we do that for a sustained period of time, which is really how we're taught to move through life. We're really taught like, okay, when you're in school, you behave like this. When you're at home, you behave like that. When you're in a relationship, you're supposed to behave like this. So there's always a supposed to in our environments. And those supposed tos, they serve a purpose. But in the deconstructing and understanding of our deeper psyche, they hold us back from tapping into the truth of who we are. And so when we are quite literally being half of who we are, not anchored in the full expression of who we are, we lose touch with our bodies and we lose touch with the wisdom of our bodies. So I'm going to give you a really practical example that I noticed while I was in Kauai. Kauai is very much a psychic, higher chakra, inner eye, pineal gland type of island. And she was really showing me clearly the way that she likes to be. It's just like clear vision of what was living in my body and how my life up to that point had taught me how to manage the environment of my body. So basically, I woke up one morning and I was staying with a friend. And I have always had a very difficult time with digestion. What that means is that my body is highly sensitive to a lot of foods, and that has created a lot of anxiety in my body. And so when I'm in external environments that I don't necessarily have the ability to control, then things come up. And the ability to quite literally digest food can be and is often affected. So I noticed how I woke up that morning. And so as I was preparing breakfast, my mind began to quicken and my body began to feel anxiety. And I started to feel these fears and doubts and worries about, will my body be able to digest this? And how is it going to land? And what's going to happen? And as I sat down and I prayed over my food and I took a few deep breaths and I asked for guidance, I realized how it wasn't about the external circumstance in that moment that was causing anxiety. It was the way that I grew up eating food in my home environment that created a template of anxiety around the food that I ate. And that clarity was provided because I decided to drop into the wisdom of my body. Kauai was asking me to see clearly, not see the environment outside of me as a physical representation of what I was so used to seeing, but instead being able to interpret the environment around me from a new lens. And I couldn't see it from a new lens until I was able to see my past. And that was such an incredible moment for me because it just reignited the power of the templates and the history and the things that kind of feel heavy in our bodies and dictate so much of our reality. And yet when we begin to open our inner eye, alongside dropping into our body's wisdom. See, you can't do it separately. You can't open your inner eye and not be connected to your body. And that was my initial lesson at the beginning of this path over a decade ago, is that when we open our inner eye, but we can't drop into our body's wisdom, we quite literally become disembodied. And what happens then is that it may be really exciting to open our inner eye and have all these incredible experiences, but we actually never receive the wisdom of life. It's just very entertaining. And so being in Kauai after so many years and bringing these two parts together, bringing the ability to not only rewrite the templates within me, but also drop into my body and ask my body what it needed and why I was feeling so uncomfortable. And to just show me what was happening across time without judgment allowed me to rewrite that moment and not only just have clarity for the time being, but also move with that in the future, knowing that in future circumstances, it's about being present in my body and not letting that old template arise. So my invitation to you and Kauai's invitation to you is, where are you not allowing your inner eye to see clearly because you're not allowing yourself to fully drop into the wisdom of your body? Where are you allowing your mind to lead the show and make all of the decisions and decide what your external environment is, what you are perceiving as a reality, whereas it's actually your body's wisdom kind of screaming at you, asking you to listen and to slow down and to witness and to unravel the things that have held you back. And my full intention with sharing this with you is that next time you're in a situation where you feel like your emotional field is taking control of the experience, you feel overwhelmed or anxious or angry or whatever the situation is, and you are blinded, literally, you cannot see, you do not have clarity, I invite you to take a moment and drop in. And this is what we're doing inside the membership this month, is we are beginning to train our bodies to turn within and create more presence. Because what I'm finding is that we're not speaking enough about how to make these things practical. And when we don't have the ability to make things practical, which is my big life lesson, we can't apply anything. We just know these concepts, but we can't do anything with them. And what the feminine is teaching me now is that that's the most important thing. The most important thing on the feminine path is to make it practical, because practicality allows for embodiment. So just coming full circle, I invite you to drop into your body's wisdom more often than not. And be honest with yourself and ask yourself, where am I blinded? By myself, by my own templates, by my old behaviors, by my own patterns and belief systems. And where am I not allowing to tap into the parts of me that I cannot see? And so if I cannot see them, the only thing that's left is being able to feel them. This is where our divine will has to come into place. And this is what we're going to be not only moving into this month inside the membership, but also part of the seductress path is, how do we drop back into the wisdom of our bodies? The seductress is the first initiatory path of returning to our feminine wisdom and coming back to the living, breathing, books of knowledge that live within our bones and blood and brain and organs. And I say that with every single fiber of my being, because so much of the energy sessions that I am involved with is literally just allowing for our body's wisdom to have space to breathe and communicate with us. And if this is the path that calls you, if you're really called to start to turn within and start to give space for your body to speak to you, to teach you, because ultimately any time that we're entering a container, we're entering it because we desire to return to ourselves. And this is the seductress path. The seductress is the first initiation, the first gateway that opens and asks us to return, to turn our gaze within and to start opening our inner eye so that we can not have visions, not be clairvoyant, but quite literally have clarity with communication of our body's wisdom. Be able to see when we cannot see. And I find this path so illuminating, and it's so beautiful because we think that it's about seeing, meaning visually seeing other dimensions. And some of us can do that and some of us cannot. But that is completely irrelevant. The important part about seeing is being able to know when you cannot see. I hope this is landing. When you cannot see what you cannot see. Being able to be aware of that moment. I'm just going to drop it in and break it down. In that moment when I was sitting on the table, praying over my food and asking for clarity, I knew I couldn't see something. This is what I'm asking of you. And instead of just allowing that moment to continue and being like, well, whatever, this is anxiety and this is what it's dealing with, it's like, no, I know I cannot see. And my only other option is to turn to the wisdom of my body. And that's my invitation to you. If you're called to this path and you're called to the feminine and you're called to something so deeply mystical and yet so incredibly practical to open up within you, I would be honored to guide you in that journey. Pele initiated that journey for me almost a decade ago, and it has been incredibly life-changing. There's going to be a lot of new content coming out to share with you more on the seductress path and the importance of it and how it's been the first stepping stone to basically the rest of my life. So that brings me to the end of this episode. I hope that you have enjoyed. I hope that you have felt a little bit of the frequency of the incredibly beautiful and powerful land of Hawaii and the goddesses that live there. But most importantly, the massive intelligence that lives within you and the incredible intelligence that is life. And what happens when we don't fully embrace this intelligence, when we choose to look away from it and only rely on the physical reality to tell us how to be and how to behave and what to think and what to do. I'm finding more and more that unless we build our inner temple, it will be very difficult to move through these times. And the feminine lineages have always taught us how to build our inner temples. And that's a big part of the Sophia School, is to teach women not only how to build their inner temples, but do so in a practical way. Do so in a way that allows you to move through the world, not having to resign your role and your jobs and all of these things that we think are not important, but they all are very much important to the whole functioning of this world. Okay, my love, I'm sending you many rose blessings today. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I would really appreciate you leaving a review on the podcast. That is something that I'm working toward at this stage, is building the reviews, and believe it or not, that helps a lot to get the word out. So if you have a moment, I would really appreciate you doing that, and I will see you next time. Mwah.